Hello, Jasmine. Welcome to the podcast. This is so exciting.
It is so exciting. As a long-time listener, I am really happy to be here.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I'm trying to do this new style of podcast where I just have people come on who I've worked with and who are also doing really cool things in the world. So I feel like people will benefit from hearing more about your story and experience, but then learning about what you specialize in with the mindset and yoga, breath work, all of that stuff that we love on Hormones and Harmony.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't wait to get stuck in.
And I want to split the recording kind of into two parts. So if you really are just here to listen to the mindset stuff and the spirituality of the things that Jasmine's into, you can skip forward. But if you are interested in learning like a bit more about Jasmine's story, we'll start with that to begin with. So I worked with Jasmine. Do you remember when it was? Like, I'll just have a quick look back. 2021. Does that sound right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because it was just after the lockdowns, or kind of in the midst of the tail end of the lockdowns. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, it's been a few years now, and you still check in every now and again, but you're in a good place at the moment. Not that this health journey is something that we do once and then we're good forever and we never need to think about it again. You know the importance now of maintenance and taking care of yourself long term. But when we first started to work together, you were already in the mindset, yoga, breathwork world, and you were still struggling with your health. And I know that some people, that's the very last thing that they'll do. So I
Mm,
really love how your story emphasizes the importance of both. I think the breath work and all of that got you to a certain point, and you took that first step in recognizing your lifestyle and your stress levels were just too high, and that's ultimately what contributed to some of your health issues. But then that only got you so far. You then had to go in and work on and restoring the physical body. So if you're happy to, I'd love for you to share maybe up until that moment that we started to work together, a bit over like an overview of your health history and what was it? What was like the moment that you were like, I need help? What was it that you were struggling with back then?
yeah, it's so interesting to look back actually, and I kind of see my time in the health and wellness industry definitely in two phases. It's almost like the first 5 years I was in it, but I wasn't fully committed to that kind of life, that kind of eating, that relationship with my body. And there was part of me that was so wanting it, and yet I was still, like you say, really struggling with my health. And I think a big part of me felt a bit of a fraud in the industry because I thought, like, I'm really struggling, and yet I'm up here teaching people, holding space for people, and I think I need to work on this more. And that definitely, yeah, it definitely rang true about kind of 5 years into my teaching career. But if we fast forward to when it all began, I guess you could say, it was definitely in my teenage years. I got my cycle, got my period probably quite late compared to my friends at least. And I was about 14, nearly 15, and I had maybe one or two cycles, and I was in a lot of dance training at the time. Outside of school, I was in a leotard tights constantly and having a period, even though at first I was like, great, I'm finally, caught up with my friends. And then the reality of it was, I didn't know when it was going to happen. There was very minimal education on how we look after or can trust our cycle. And so after my second period, I went to my mum and said, please, can I go on the pill? And I went to the doctor and they put me on the pill, and that's where I was for the next 10 years pretty much. Um, and when I decided to come off it initially, I think I was off it for a year in total, and I broke out in really bad acne all the way around my cheeks and my jaw. And I was actually teaching in Spain at the time, and as is the Spanish culture, they're just quite honest and upfront with you. And they used to say to me, "What's wrong with your skin?" And yeah, and it used
Pretty
to
timely.
break me. Yeah,
Oh.
it was hard to hear, but yeah, not only did I, have the skin issues, but I also didn't get my period back in that year as well. And at the time, I was just yeah, as I say, kind of half in it, wanting to be in this health and wellness world, but also I didn't want to almost deal with and confront the imbalances I had. So I went back on the pill again. Sure enough, it kind of put a plaster over everything. And I think it got to the point where I just didn't want to be putting hormones into my body anymore. And I tried to do everything, myself, and I tried all of the things, all of the self-research, and there's so much information out there. And I think I found your podcast through a friend that I'd worked with. And in the end, I think it was just a case of it was kind of a self-worth decision, it's like I'm actually worth spending this money and dedicating this time on my health. And yeah, I think a big part to play with it with you was really connecting back to myself, which after the years and years of time in dance training, you really are taught to, yes, train your body to an extent, but also ignore a lot of your energy levels, ignore symptoms, ignore honoring rest, ignoring honoring pain. You're kind of taught to push through it. And that was 2 decades that I was spent in that, in that world. So it was a lot of rewiring to kind of move through. But yeah, lots of imbalances as well that kind of came as a result of that.
And how did that whole world of dance affect your body image, if at all?
Oh, uh,
So I've
well,
heard I've heard that's a big thing. Like there's high rates of eating disorders, or maybe not even full blown eating disorders, but just disordered relationship with food and your body. And yeah, things like your menstrual cycle. They're like you can't do anything about it. Just push through. Just keep going. We don't
yeah,
honor like the female fluctuations.
yeah, there was no honoring of any fluctuations at all, and yeah, it was quite bad. But it's interesting because with a lot of these things, I think when you're in it, you don't realize how bad it is, and it's only when you come out of it or you come to reflect and you think, oh my, like I can't believe I was in that. I remember being maybe we were 12 and we were we danced in these little hot pants and these tiny little crop tops, and I remember my dance teacher saying, right, everyone turn to the mirror, take a side bend. If you have rolls down the side of your body, you should not be in a crop top. You need to put a top on.
Way. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's poor.
And then I think maybe I was 14, 15 when I was told to go on my first diet. And that was strange because it was just kind of like, oh, okay, this is what I have to do. And I was like fitting into children's clothing at the time. And because I don't have a petite build, I have a very, I don't know what you'd call my build. I think that's it. In one audition, I was told I had an athletic build. So maybe that's what I have, but it's not petite. And so it didn't fit within the kind of constructs of dance, especially ballet or contemporary dance, which is what I was specifically training in. So yeah, it really did impact it in a huge way. And I'd be honest to say that it is something that I constantly have to remind myself. It's not something that has gone away with all of the work that I've done. Instead, it's something that I constantly have to go, oh, there's that voice. Okay.
Mhm.
And I have to make a conscious choice not to buy into the stories.
And then am I right that you then got into like fitness and teaching like more fitness classes? And was it personal training?
Yeah. Yeah, so I was, in the midst of lots of auditions when I came out of dance, full-time dance training. And I remember being lined up with, however many hundreds of other girls. And I remember sitting there thinking, please cut me, please, because they kind of go through and cut the people they don't want. I remember thinking, please cut me, please cut me. I don't want to be here. I don't want to get this. I really don't want to be here. And I thought, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? I dedicated my life to this so far at the age of 20, 21, but I was like, why am I doing this? And my mum's actually a fitness instructor. One of the things she does is she's a fitness instructor. And so it was a quite a nice kind of transition, if you like. I said, Mum, what can I do? What can I retrain in? And yeah, and I went into the fitness world probably for only about a year and maybe 2 years in total. And my clients find this absolutely hilarious when I tell them this now, but I was that person on a spin bike with the loud,
Say like boot camp style.
literally. I was that
I endorsing
person.
that.
No, like who was she? That was like, yeah, pushing people, like I was teaching like 5, 6 classes back to back. For a long while I taught overseas, so we'd be doing it in the midday sun. I remember for a long while in this outdoor spin studio, which was gorgeous, but the spin bike for the instructor wasn't in the shade. So our midday class in like 30, 40 degree heat, we had the blaring sun. And
That's why your sodium was so low on the HTMA. I think we've just found our roots problem.
that's why. Well, I used to pull my sports bras out of the laundry basket, and I used to think, what's this white
Oh
like
God. Yeah.
powder on
Your
my sports
minerals.
bras? Literally
That's
to
your
my
minerals,
health.
darling. Well,
Yeah.
that's insane. How did your body image change? Because I know that the fitness world can be just as bad with body image, and there's this like jealousy and competition with personal trainers, versus what it then moved to with yoga. How did that help?
Yeah, so I think compared to the dance world, I did feel slightly more accepted in the fitness world. So there was a piece of me that was like, okay, the size of my thighs have a place in the fitness world. Like these are celebrated somewhat. Um, and so I don't know whether I felt like I was shamed for my body within the fitness space, but I definitely got bored very quickly of, oh, squat to build your glutes and, deadlift to, do this. And for me, the visuals just became really boring. And I thought, oh, like at the end of the day, we're born with, you know, to some extent, the body constitution that we're born with. And isn't there more to it than the way we look? I just was like, this is just not doing it for me anymore. And I kind of felt like that quite quickly. And I actually, when I went to India to do my yoga teacher training, I went because a contract that I'd accepted, I think this was in Greece, yeah, a contract I'd accepted there, they said, well, we need you to be able to teach yoga as well. And I thought, well, fine, I'll go and do my teacher training. But I wasn't hugely fussed about India or yoga. I just thought tick that box. And in quite a dramatic way, it really did change. It changed my life, really. And it was an incredible experience. And the physical piece was one piece, but the mind piece within the yogic philosophy was another. And I remember being sat in a philosophy lesson, and I was the youngest person on my course at the time, and they were talking to us about the extent of human suffering, which comes into the text of the yogic philosophy. And at the time, I thought I just couldn't get my head around it. I thought, I'm in my 20s. I'm in India. I live in a hut on the beach. I was like, what do you mean we suffer? I don't get it. I thought this is just not true. Like maybe depending on what you're going through. I was like, but I'm not suffering. I just thought this is just great. And everyone else on the course looked at me and they're like, you'll get it
You
one
wait.
day.
You'll learn with
You'll
time.
learn, young one.
Yeah. So what year
Yeah.
would that have been?
Oh, I was 22. Yeah,
Pretty
22.
good. How old are
So
you now? Like 30,
I'm
30?
30 in November.
Okay.
So yeah,
Like 8 years ago.
yeah.
Wow. And then things just, I know you've added more tools to your toolkit. Have they just come over time? You've just like fell in love with the whole world and you just want to keep learning, keep growing?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I try to be open to what I am drawn to and what I'm kind of what I'm drawing in work wise and passion wise. And when I came out of my yoga training, I taught for a long while more of the flow-based practices, more of like the vinyasa, the kind of hot practices, if you like, the ones that build up a sweat. And for a long while, I kind of started thinking, everyone that's coming into my classes are exhausted. And then I'm getting them to do chaturanga after chaturanga. And it just didn't sit right with me. It didn't feel right. And I remember when I was in India, an Ayurvedic doctor said to me, "You've got too much fire, you've got too much masculine energy, and that's not your natural constitution. So there's imbalances here." And I thought, I'm doing yoga. I don't have too much masculine energy. I thought,
An
you're right.
epitome of femininity. What do you
Yeah.
say?
I was like, I'm embodying it. God, look at me. I'm in harem pants. And yeah, and then I found yin yoga. And that changed everything really, because even within yoga, within these spiritual movement practices, you still have yang and the yin. You have ways that you can activate your body, and you have ways that you can soften your body. And it was a real lesson for me to learn how to move my body or use my body in a way that wasn't extreme, because for so long I had to either do the most intense workout or the deepest stretch or the sweatiest vinyasa practice or the strongest diet. If the hungrier I was, the better it was, because it meant, bigger calorie deficit. Everything was such extremes with me. And yin yoga taught me to really honor the softer edge. And that was a real lesson, and I think a real healing piece within my journey. And as you know, when I started working with you, I was so, fatigue was one of the big things that I was navigating. And for probably about 3, 4, maybe even 5 years, all I could really manage was yin yoga. I didn't have the capacity to do anything else. I was so burnt out and my body was so exhausted. And even though I don't feel that way now, yin yoga still definitely has a space in my heart, because I think it's such a healing practice.
This past year for me has been, I think, a deeper exploration into like nervous system and slowing down and my feminine energy. And I just had another, I feel like I'm progressing, and then I'll have a little moment where I'm like, okay, you still need to keep going. And this will probably be a lifetime thing as well, because of how ingrained it is into my being after just so many years of being this way, and probably generational aspects have been passed down. But I posted this on my Instagram stories yesterday. Have you heard of TRE? Trauma and
Yes. Oh my
release.
goodness. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love I love TRE.
Well,
It's
I did
incredible.
that for the first time just because I always want to explore different things and try out certain methods, and especially somatic therapy. I think it's huge, and a lot of my clients have issues with trauma and limiting beliefs, and I'm trying to find ways to support them. So I tried a TRE session with a practitioner, and one of the main move of it, as you'll probably know, is kind of like a glute bridge.
Hmm.
And she was saying, get to a point where it's 6 to 7 out of 10 intensity. We're not going for 10 out of 10. You should be feeling this energy and burning in your thighs and your glutes, but we're not really doing it for the workout. And me being me, I was like, oh, we do this in Pilates, like I'll be great. So I was like pushing through, and I was getting the tremors because it's activating this tremoring response in the body that helps to move energy and stagnant energy. And she was like, are you sure you don't need a break, because you've been holding that for a long time? And I kind of forgot I was pushing through, and I was thinking, if I keep going for longer, the tremors will be bigger and I'm going to get more out of it. And she was like, no, please just like have a break. This is part of your problem. And it really just reflected that it just was so ironic that I was doing this thing to help calm my nervous system and relax my body, and I was just taking it to the extreme. It's so
Yeah.
funny. It's like
And we do.
we still got work to do.
Yeah, and so many of us do, and I think that's, well, depending on, our natural hard wiring within our system, I think we can definitely sway either way on the spectrum, but so many of us are, yeah, hardwired to try more and do more. Absolutely. And I think for a long while, I kind of felt like it was my responsibility to be the advocator of it's okay to do less
Mm.
sometimes.
Hmm. Yeah, she
And
was like, more doesn't equal better. Sometimes the
mm,
smallest little thing. And even just lying, I went to a stone bath the other week. And it was the first time I ever went to one. I've done loads of other things before, breathwork, hypnosis, but I did a sound bath. I went with my friend and I found it so difficult to just lie there in the
yeah,
room for an hour without being on my phone, and my brain would not shut off. My body was completely relaxed and I was getting the twitches like my body was going to sleep, but my brain was just, I was getting annoyed at myself because I was
yeah.
like, writing down, and then I was thinking of all these like funny scenarios that could happen. And then I was thinking, okay, I shouldn't be thinking, let's just calm. And it was just absolute monkey chatter in my mind. But I am open to doing it again. I'm open to trying it again. It's not something that I am against, and it's probably a sign that I need to do more of it, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the first time I hear this all the time, the first time someone comes to a sound bath, there is often that kind of mental chatter going on. And that's because when we're dropping into a meditative experience, we're looking at shifting into these altered states of consciousness. And we have these layers that we move through. And that first layer is the mental layer, it's the mind. And especially with our work, so many of us, we have to, you know, we have to spend time up in our headspace. We're thinking, we're planning. You know, for you, you're going through all of your clients' results, lab work. That's a very headspace energy to be in. So that muscle tends to be exercised a lot, right?
Yep.
And then when we go into a sound bath or a breath journey, or even, you know, a deeply somatic yoga class, the when the instruction is to drop into the sensations within the body, which is that next layer, it's a different muscle that you're working. It's completely different. So the first time we do it, and I know the first time that I received a sound journey, I had a very similar experience. But then there was also that part of me that was like, wow, I almost don't know how to do this.
Mhm.
And
And I was like
yeah,
comparing myself. I was like, oh, the lady next to me, she seems to be loving life, and it was bad because I was like, oh, I could be on my phone right now. I could be doing work, and I was like, no, that's what we're here for. But it was, to be fair, it's like a Friday evening after the end of a work week, so I think I'd rushed there and I was late, almost late because of
oh,
traffic. So I just don't think I set myself up for success. So next time it should be better.
yeah. And if you're going to a sound bath, and you know, anyone listening, even, I always recommend I get to any class like that if I can, obviously, depending on the day. But I always try and get there at least 15 minutes early, just because, like you say, if you're rushing to get there, it sets the tone for the experience. And it's almost like you will benefit so much more by being like, it starts at 6:30. In my head, it starts at 6 because I
Mm.
need to mentally
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
shift from the day's
In a
work.
dark room for half an hour before.
Yeah, literally turn my phone off and just, you know, breathe.
Yeah. Well, I tried to do that, but there was like a road closed and I had to do a detour.
Oh,
So it's good that I set off early, otherwise I would have been extremely late. But yeah, me and
yeah,
my friend are going to go again and give it another whirl because
good.
I know the
Yeah, do.
benefits.
And each time you do it, it will be very different, and you'll find that you receive a different medicine each time because it's something different that you are in need of. So yeah, stay open and yeah, as you say, give it another go.
We'll let you know how it goes.
Please do.
So I want to get on to your experience of coaching, working with me. So we started working together in, I think, September, sorry, 2021. And your main complaints, I had a quick look back over your notes, were the fatigue that you mentioned before, and then some hormonal symptoms, mainly premenstrual. So you still had these irregular cycles, and you were experiencing spotting and also breast tenderness. They were like your main things. So just take me back to that time, and maybe after our first session or two, how you initially felt on those first two calls.
It was, do you know, it was really incredible, the impact of having someone to talk to purely about what you're going through, your health. I think even after the first session, I felt a sense of recharge and optimism because, you know, it's that energy exchange that I think you told me this actually, I'm pretty sure. For every hour you,
Yep.
yeah,
Every
for
hour
every
you
hour,
give to someone else as like a therapist or a teacher, you should technically get an hour back from something, whether it's a massage or Reiki session. So yeah, just that energy exchange needs to be in balance, otherwise you will be left depleted.
yeah, definitely. And depleted was definitely something I was going through. So even after the first hour, or I think it was maybe 90 minutes, the first one, but I even felt that optimism then. Also, you know, there's change that comes with it. So there was also that kind of like, oh my goodness, am I going to be able to do this? We had change, you know, you suggested minimal changes to my diet. It wasn't
Yeah, your
it
diet
wasn't
was pretty
drastic.
good, honestly. And that's the thing. People think, oh, I don't need a nutritional therapist because I eat healthy and I don't really know what else there is to do. But just know that, especially with my clients these days, it's not the food that's the problem. I'm hardly ever completely overhauling someone's diet. I'm not working with people who are eating McDonald's every week. It's the people who are already eating well, and there probably are a few tweaks that we can do, especially like making sure protein intake is good, or around meal timings or how you're eating. But the actual food itself usually isn't to blame. It's the lifestyle, it's the infections in the body, it's the deficiencies, and that's where supplements and lab testing can make a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, and I think like you say, it was the small tweaks. It was, you know, the gluten that was I think gluten, giving that up and that having the biggest impact on the breast pain and the breast tenderness that I was having. I think that was literally immediate that that
Mm.
had an effect.
Mhm.
And even now, if I slip up with gluten, I notice that's the one symptom that comes back immediately, which
Isn't
is,
that like crazy though? Someone, if you don't know this stuff, you would never think to
yeah,
try going gluten free for something related to your brain or your breasts or your skin.
yeah,
It just doesn't make sense. People think with a gluten intolerance, you have to have crippling stomach pain and diarrhea after eating like a slice of bread, but it can manifest in hormone imbalances or immune system problems or neurological, behavioral, mental health issues. So I don't think your diet was overly like high in gluten, but when someone has a sensitivity, and just with what you were saying, I suspected it, and I do pretty much with all clients recommend going gluten free as a trial. Some people it doesn't make as big of a difference, but yours was quite sudden and quite like it's just you can't deny it. That reaction that you had or that lack of symptom that you had after just a few weeks, a few cycles, it was amazing. So I think that's easier to stick with something when you see such a night and day difference, isn't it?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I was resistant to it at first. I won't lie. So if anyone, you know, hears that and thinks I can't give up
Yeah.
the bread, please know that I was that person as well. Especially because my partner, now fiance, actually,
Yes,
is
congratulations.
Italian.
I've not had
Thank you.
a face-to-face call with you since. I know
I
we've
know,
talked on
I know.
Instagram, but I'm
Thank you.
excited.
He yeah, he said to me, he was like, oh, she's going to make you give up gluten before I even got on the call with you. And I said, well, we don't know this. We just need to
And
we
he's
just need
Italian,
to
isn't he?
he's Italian, yeah.
That's his worst nightmare. I'm his
It's
nemesis.
literally gluten is his love language. And he's not only Italian, but he's an Italian chef by trade. So, you know, his whole family, you know, come from a family line of chefs. So even when I, you know, don't eat gluten around them now, sometimes they'll say to me like, oh, you know, does it really bother you that much? And then it's a bit difficult because, like you say, it's not obvious with me. I'm not going to run to the toilet, but I might fall asleep like on the sofa immediately,
Mhm.
or I might have the breast pain that follows a month later, or I might feel riddled with anxiety, which were three of the things that definitely show up for me when I eat it, which, you know, in a way is manageable because when I am in Italy, if I do want to eat it, and strangely, and I think you mentioned this again to me, it depends where it's produced and how it's produced, but if I eat gluten in Italy, I don't have the breast pain, I don't have the reaction. If I, well, for instance, I went to Istanbul in November, I ate it then, and I did have a reaction to it.
And it also
And
depends on what else is going on. So the reason that it's likely causing this breast pain is because it's producing inflammation. And that inflammation is stemming from your gut, but your gut is like literally the center of your body, and the center of your health. So this is where a lot of neurotransmitters are made, where we absorb our food. So this is how it has a knock-on effect on hormonal health. So maybe it depends on what else is going on those trips. Is it that you had maybe you're on your menstrual cycle, or you've had extra stress recently, or I don't know, there could be more alcohol on one of the trips. There's other factors along with the quality is really important. What else is in the product? So is it just pure organic local wheat, or is it also like pasta with cheese and sunflower oil and all of that combined? So yeah, there's variables, but we do want to get to the point, if possible, where we can have it every now and again and it has minimal effect on us. I feel like that's a nice, resilient human, but there's no denying the impact of inflammatory foods if you are sensitive. And I think there's a spectrum as well. Some people, and it can change. So you might have noticed early on when you had a slight exposure to it, your symptoms were more obvious. But as time goes on and your body gets healthier and healthier, you might still have a bit of breast tenderness, but it's not as severe as it was before. It's like with me, when I'd have a break from gluten and then have a little biscuit 5 years ago, I would have had my symptoms were more joint pain, definitely anxiety, and probably acne and bloating maybe 2 to 3 days later. So it was hard to pinpoint at times. But then the longer that I was gluten-free, when I did get a slight exposure and the healthier my body was at that stage, I wasn't really having any symptoms. But you just said you listened to my latest podcast, and I was having maybe an equivalent of a biscuit every month. That just that amount, like a little bit in sauce, a little bit in foods and meals when I go out to eat. But my stool test showed up with high gluten antibodies. So my body was reacting, I just wasn't aware of it. And imagine if that just goes on over time and other things trigger inflammation. And if my body was more stressed or went through an infection of some sort, then the gluten could be a problem then. So I have since gone as strict as possible gluten-free, and I don't really feel any difference now, but I know that my body is going to be happier and my immune system is going to be less triggered as a result. So I'm doing it out of a place of self-love, and I'm choosing to do this, not that, oh, I can never have gluten again and it's this like poisonous, toxic thing I can never eat. I'm choosing to do this because I value my health, and I've been in a place of chronic sickness before, and I just want to do everything that I can, everything that I do have control over. I want to try and manage that as much as possible, because what we eat or what we don't eat is under our control 95% of the time. And for you, if you don't have celiac or a severe allergy to gluten, if it's going to be a toss-up between you being in Italy and all you have to eat is a bowl of pasta versus going without food and not knowing when your next meal is, I would rather you eat the gluten, eat the pasta, and just accept and enjoy it in the moment. And then maybe do the best that you can the rest of the day with your protein and not having it again for the next meal, just going in moderation. That would actually be better than just skipping food and having this blood sugar roller coaster afterwards.
yeah, absolutely.
It's a nice place of balance.
And I think it becomes a decision you want to make eventually. For instance, with me, I was like so resistant to it, and now it's not something that I really think about really at all, because if you're making, really conscious food decisions, gluten is in all of the cake, all of the bread, all of the pasta, so all of the things that probably aren't going to make you feel great. That's what gluten's in anyway. So by skipping that, and by skipping the free from aisle, which is something you advise me to do as well, you naturally take away the choice of, okay, I want the cookies. You're just like, well, I can't. So, and that to me, yeah, it doesn't really feel like I'm choosing it now. It just feels like a lifestyle decision, and I feel better for it. So it's not something I resent.
Yeah. And like I said, when you've seen such a stark difference and your quality of life improves because you're not in pain every month with breast tenderness, it's so much easier to stick with it. I understand people get to a point where they're like, I still feel ill either way, and I just have to remind them, gluten, there's an analogy that I give. It's like having 10 nails stuck in the bottom of your foot. So imagine if we just remove one, if we just go gluten-free, it's helping, but you're not really going to notice major pain relief until all of them are out. So gluten-free is part of the process, but so is like healing your gut and mineral balancing and slowing down with the intense workouts and getting quality sleep. Those are all of the other things that are going to move the needle. But it's not to say that, oh, we don't need to go gluten-free, because that's not important. It is for a lot of people.
Yeah, it all has impact, doesn't it?
I'm so happy you found a nice mindset around it, and it's sustainable for you. That's what we're all about here. And yeah, your hormones are thanking you as a result. So
They
I was
are.
ask, out of everything that we've done, so after the first call, we did some lab results as well, if you remember. So we did the mineral test. I think did we do an organic acid panel? Oh no, blood results too. And the main takeaways that we found were B vitamins. I think your iron was a little bit low as well. On your HTMA, I think the initial one that we did, you didn't have the calcium shell, which we'll come on to it in a moment, but you had low sodium, low magnesium. So this is the adrenal stress, and why you just meditated every day and slowing down with the workouts and slowing down with the stress wasn't enough. You got to the point where you'd physically depleted your body, and you need more than just stress management to get you back up. That will help you long term, and that's what keeps you moving forward, but you have to actively go in and restore the damage, so to speak, that was done to your body from those years of stress and overtraining, or just workload, mental stress. And I think they were the main things. And then we did some gut work, so parasite / gut cleanse. I would just love to know what made the biggest impact other than the gluten-free, in your opinion. I know we've done a lot over the years, but just biggest thing, biggest takeaways, what stuck with you, what's like, oh my God, this really made a huge difference.
Wow, I feel like probably the gut work. I mean, all of it's been, like you say, with the nails and on the hand, like they've all had impact, I'm sure. Just knowing the importance of the gut, I think the parasite cleanse was something that I was really shocked by, because I don't, I didn't, and I don't struggle with my digestive health, luckily, touch wood. And when you mentioned about going on this parasite cleanse, I trusted you, so I wasn't adverse to it, but I didn't really think much would come of it, and I was really surprised to see physically, that you are passing parasites, and you just might not know about it, and it makes me think like how many people are walking around with that as their, as their norm. And I'm still now doing them. You advise to then do them like once a year. So once a year, I'll still do that. So it's still very much a part of my wellness routine, as are the coffee enemas, as are the cast oil packs. And I think that all has, a huge impact.
Yeah, I think you had the foundations, you had the food, you had the lower intensity workouts and the stress management routines. But like with most people I work with, it comes to these other things like gut infections or leaky gut, SIBO, parasites, all of that. Mineral imbalances, that's the next thing. A lot of people, not yourself, because you are already well versed in this, is the stress, the trauma, the fast-paced living, they need to slow down. And what else? Yeah, just rebuilding the body up with nutrients, sleep, and detox, I'd say would be the third thing. So gut, minerals, and detox. They're the three things that I usually work with people on who are already doing the basics, but they're just not feeling good. So yeah, I think the stage that you're at now is the maintenance stage, and I am so happy like that you were very good student, very good client. You stuck with everything that I ever said, and you were fully invested, and I loved hearing that you trusted the process. And it's very common again with the parasite cleanse, and when I start talking about someone's gut health and they're not struggling with IBS or constipation, and I'm telling them that their acne or their eczema or their anxiety or the urinary tract infections are linked to the gut. They just don't, it's like with gluten, they don't put two and two together, but 90% of the time they'll go with it because they're working with me and they trust my expertise, and then they're like, oh my god, that's made the biggest difference, and maybe after all I did have gut problems because these other things are clearing up and I've not actually directly focused on them. I've worked on this like big central part of the body that has such an effect on everything else, and yeah, my chronic bladder infections and chronic skin issues have started to clear up. So yeah, I'm glad that you trusted the process, and you know now that most people have parasites. You don't ever have to have gone to India, but that was a risk factor, so that was waving a red flag. Just any foreign travel, or there's certain parts of the world that do have higher rates of parasites and these bacterial infections, especially if someone's had a history of food poisoning, if they work a lot outside, or they've done wild swimming, or they have pets. This just increases the likelihood that they have parasites. But whenever someone has just stubborn symptoms, chronic symptoms, and it doesn't make sense based on their lifestyle, I'm always thinking parasites, because we contract them, we pick them up when our body is in this weakened state. So when our vitality is low, when we're at like a 5 out of 10 or less on the vitality health scale, these bugs take over. They see us as like a vulnerable host, and they're opportunistic, meaning that they'll jump on board, they'll start to proliferate, they start to overgrow, and then they thrive, they survive by stealing our nutrients, robbing us of energy. And unless you actively get rid of them, unless you do a parasite cleanse or use some sort of products to get them out of the body, they're not just going to leave on their own. And they can be just draining you so that you can't get rid of them. Like, there comes a point where a healthy, strong immune system should protect us against parasites and bugs long term, but in order to get our immune system back up to do that, we have to bring down the infection load using these antimicrobials, antifungals, antiparasitic herbs. And whenever someone sees the parasite, they're like, oh my god, I didn't expect this, but I think I give you a heads up that can happen. I think there's been the odd person I forgot to warn them, and they're like freaking out, ringing me like, what's this in the toilet? So just know that it's part of the process if you ever do a parasite cleanse with me.
To trust the process.
Trust the process, absolutely. And is there anything else that you want to share about your experience? So I'll just kind of fast forward through all of the work that we did on your mineral balancing, gut healing, optimizing your diet, so just increasing protein, being mindful of certain foods, increasing certain foods, and giving it time as well. I think that's an important part. It's not just going to be a 6-month transformation where all of your symptoms are gone. I know some things took a little bit longer to shift, especially the hormonal stuff, but you did get to a point where your cycles were more regular, and then you could finally start benefiting from these female phases that we have. And I know you knew about that beforehand, but how has that impacted your life? Just having this more regular cycle where you can really feel the shift in your hormones after being on the birth control for over 10 years.
Oh, it's like being in a completely different body. And I remember when I was looking at coming off the pill initially and reading people say things like, oh, it changes, you feel completely different. And I remember coming off the pill and thinking, I don't feel any different. In fact, I'm just noticing all of these things, like ripping the plaster
Yeah,
off and
I feel
seeing the
worse
data.
than ever.
Yeah. So I felt like I'd been fully sold the lie with that. But now, I mean, fast forward, 3 years of being off it completely. Is it 3 years? Yeah. Well, maybe 4. And yeah, and it feels like I'm in a completely different body. And my self-care now, my movement practices, my breathwork practices, they all cycle with my cycle. So I change what I do on a daily basis. I don't run every single day of the week. I don't, practice certain breathwork practices every day of the month, because I feel so connected to the fluctuations in my energy levels and in my hormone levels. And, you know, I have such a knowing of what phase of my cycle I'm in, that that's all I use for contraception as well. You know, we don't use any barrier methods. I use the fact that I know when I'm in my fertile phase. And, you know, sometimes when you tell people that, they're like, oh God, that's a bit risky. And well, 3 years into a relationship, and you know, it's not been risky.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, from, you know, coming from the girl that was a serial intermittent faster, you know, fasted cardio, fasted coffee, black coffee on an empty stomach for years and years and years.
You were asking for the hormone problems.
I wasn't
Yeah.
I? Yeah, and then no wonder, you know, doing all of that, that I feel now like I am in a different body, and it feels, yeah, it definitely feels life changing.
And so you said that, is it for your own practice you switch things up, or what about with work? If you're teaching, do you schedule your classes around your cycle?
Yeah, so I will schedule my events around my cycle, and that I've kind of got into a really nice pattern with now. And I actually will mark in my calendar when I know. So for me, I know it's different for everyone, but for me, like the 3 days before my cycle, I know that I'm really dropping in energy. And then I know that the first 1 to 2 days of my cycle, I'm going to want to honor resting, not because I necessarily feel as depleted as before, but because I'm really trying to like honor that phase.
Yeah, we're
And
supporting our
so,
hormones the next cycle with how we treat our body with that period.
yeah, exactly. And where I can, I will schedule all of the event bookings around that. And then my regular classes have to kind of go on as usual. But what I will do is I will change the way I hold space. So a lot of my work is one-to-one, and a lot of that includes a lot of hands-on adjusting, and or, you know, hands-on body work for the breath work specifically. And I just make sure that if I am already low in energy, I make sure that I am, you know, all prepped with food, with other energy support, be it electrolytes, be it, yeah, snacks and food, be it certain crystals or stones that I have with me. And I make sure that when I am doing any body work, especially for the adjusting, it's all body weight based. So I don't know if that makes sense to people that aren't using their body, maybe, but I try to make sure I'm not having to do any pulling or heavy lifting. And it's actually all me working with the natural flow of gravity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's less
Um,
tension on your body.
yeah, exactly. Um, so naturally I'll shift the way that I teach around that, and that's felt really good.
Yeah, I try to do so. There's some things in my job that I can't change. Like I'll have clients who need to see me at a certain time, and that's fine. But with my podcast, with any events, any interviews or anything like that, I'll try and schedule it around the follicular to ovulation phase when you're better at speaking, you're just more likely to have more energy. So there's little things that we can do, but we can't revolve our whole life, unfortunately. Well, some people can, that would be the dream. But for a lot of people, it's not realistic to completely go off grid for the week of the period and then just resurface. But yeah, we just have to do what we can and come at it from a place of self-love. And I'm doing this to support my body, not getting into this fearful mindset. I know some people are like, oh, I can't eat this certain food, or I can't do this if I'm on my period. You can do it. If you really want to go for a run on your period, you can do it, but it might not be the wisest to support your hormones. That's all that we're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've had, well, when I was working with you, you know, something I said I really wanted to work on, and you actually pointed it out in my test results as well. But something I really wanted to go back and work on was the kind of, you know, the wounding, the early, I use the word traumas, attachment traumas, you know, that come from childhood. And I booked this this residential, this kind of retreat where you go back and you look at all that, and it happened to fall during my period. And we got there, and I knew it was going to be a lot of emotional release, and I knew we actually were tapping into a lot of release for anger as well, so tuning into your rage. And I remember going there and thinking, oh, I really, like, ideally I wouldn't be on my period for this, but what can you do? I couldn't cancel it. And so I had to trust it, and I had to go with it. And it was simultaneously the hardest and one of the best things I've ever done. But what really interested me was how it showed up then on my following lab results with you.
Yeah, your mineral test. Do you remember how soon after it was that you took the sample?
So I would have done that in February. I would have taken the sample in summer, and I saw you in autumn.
Mm. Yeah, so the HTMA is a test that we're talking about, and I think it would have been, I think it was your second test, honestly. Your second test, and I think we've done 3 in total. So the second test, one of her markers, calcium, looked higher. It was like double what it was initially, and a lot of other things have got better. Your symptoms were obviously better, and I was like, Jasmine, what's been, what's happened since the last time that we spoke? What has changed? And at first you were like racking your brain a little bit, like, oh, I don't know, like what's changed? Because it's a sign of stress, like recent stress on the body, especially emotional trauma. And it finally clicked. You were like, oh, I had this retreat. Could it be that? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. If you were bringing up all of these like deep-seated emotions, and it was a stressful time because your hormone levels were low and you were just putting this additional like stress on yourself, it was ultimately like an amazing thing. And then the next time you tested, your calcium shell had come down, so we resolved that. But that's why I love the mineral test so much, and I know you continue to use it and check in like once a year, because minerals are so important for everything. Your ovulation, so that's why like menstrual cycles have become more regular, and skin and your immune system and your mood, your detox, literally everything. The minerals are the spark plugs for that. And yeah, I think that just really shocked you to see how, you know, that stress impacts the body, but to see it very clearly, and you can't like lie on that test. It's the written on paper how that event how that event affected you. And it caused a little bit of disruption short term, but for long term benefits, like with the parasite cleanse. Things can go a little bit AWOL for a few months. Some people's cycle gets a little bit worse during that time, or the skin flares up a little bit, or the mood, they're just feeling more irritable, but it's for long term gain. So yeah, I'm sure that you are just loving that test, and you will keep like checking in once a year or so and just making sure that we stay as balanced as possible with minerals.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely will keep checking in. And it's not just the test, it's the way you interpret the test and your knowledge around it, because you didn't just say what's been going on. You literally said to me, this indicates some sort of childhood. To me this indicates some sort of childhood wounding, going back and dealing with early traumas. Like, you could not have specified it more. You hit the nail on the head. And it was, I really think that it was credit that I was able to go back and do that kind of work, because we'd done a lot of the foundational work to start with. And I think you'd even said, you'd said this to me. I'd asked you, I said, I want to start working on my mental health, but I'm also conscious that we're doing a lot of this body-based work to get me back to this foundational level of health. And it was when you said, I think now would be a good time, or like you said, like in the new year would be a good time to start. And that's when I went for it. But I don't think if I'd felt as healthy as I'd felt, I'd been able to go in and do that deeper work, because I just don't think I would have been able to access that part of me, because I was so, in that survival mode, really.
And I just checked. So just to clarify, I know exactly what you mean now. So the very first test was September 2021, straight away after we had our first call. And it wasn't it was the calcium shell. Oh no, it wasn't. The calcium was on the high end of normal, so that indicated some sort of emotional stress and sluggishness in the body. But it was the trauma marker specifically. It's when your vitality ratio gets below a 1. And I was like, this is some deep-seated limiting beliefs, trauma that's likely stored in the body. So then between the first and second test, we retested in September 2021. I think that one was normal, but it was the calcium shell that had got higher. So that just showed, I think that was a bit after that retreat that you did, that showed that there had been this like flood of emotions, and your body was releasing something. And then I think the third test that we did, I think you've done one like pretty much every year. Third test that you did looked a lot better. So I've got one from September 2023. Calcium's now normal. Sodium was looking better. So yeah, I think that just shows exactly your journey emotionally. It's reflected on the minerals.
Yeah, literally, it was like yeah, it just highlights how connected it is, how the mind, the mental health, the emotional health, it has an impact on the body. It has that direct connection, and yeah, the test just shows that, doesn't it?
And what you said is what I see commonly. People have done therapy for 10 years, or they've really dialed back on their workouts and they're meditating more, they're more aware of stress. But until your physical body is stronger, so until we have built your minerals back up, your body either doesn't feel like it wants to, so it really makes your body's really resistant to any type of trauma work. It's like, no, I don't need that. I'm fine. I don't want to unpack everything because I don't feel like it would ever stop. It would ever end. But the body has to have that level of vitality up around a 6, 7 out of 10 to actually be able to release the emotions and release the trauma. So if you are someone who's been in therapy and you've tried different things, and maybe you feel slightly better and you feel like you understand your traumas and your history and your relationships more, but you still have these triggers, you still have these chronic health symptoms and nervous system dysregulation, and you just feel like it's not fully cleared, then it could be that your efforts are not going to waste, but they're not as effective as they could be because you're not focusing on building up the physical body as well. So this is where physically detoxing, making sure that your liver, your gallbladder, your bowels are flowing to get that energy moving. And then people find that when they do a coffee enema or a castor pack, they have these feelings of rage and frustration come up, or when they're doing a parasite cleanse, they're just crying uncontrollably and start to cut these parasites, human parasites, out of their life. And yeah, that again just shows the physical emotional connection, but it works either way. I feel like some people, they'll do all of the diet stuff in the world, they'll follow the plan to a T when it comes to supplements and following this specific diet, but they either don't know about the emotional connection, the energetic connection, or there's the other people who are just very spiritual. They'll meditate all day long, but they're just not nourishing their body, or they have these chronic infections in their gut that just make them still anxious and inflamed despite them doing that work. So that's where this like perfect combination, this holistic overview really comes in. So
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah, it is, and it's like that kind of light bulb moment where you're like, oh, it all has impact. It's not to prioritize something more than the other. It's like like it all is impacting you. So yeah, self-care for days.
So if someone's very, very depleted and they literally can't get out of bed, or they don't have the brain power to string a sentence together at the moment, maybe they're not the best candidate for this intense breath work or somatic release yet. Like, look, let's nourish you, let's build you up a little bit first, and then you'll actually find it more effective. I think that's the takeaway of what we're
Yeah.
trying to say. But on the flip side, if you're this person who is doing all the things, they are taking all the supplements and doing the 20 different detox practices every day, but you haven't yet explored the spiritual side of things, you're your traumas, your family history, your childhood, all of that, then maybe that's where you need to go next instead of just trying to find the next miracle product.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting noticing what you're a little bit resistant to, because, I was resistant to doing the health work, with my diet and with, lifestyle changes. And then I was like, that's probably what I'm needing right now. It's like we often need what we feel that resistance towards. I was resistance towards the therapy because I was like, no, I'm fine. And, you kind of normalize your mental health a lot of the time. And, I didn't know that it was strange. Well, not strange, that's the wrong word. I didn't know there was anything wrong or unusual with going into a group of people that I didn't know and assuming that everyone would dislike me.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that I didn't think there was anything unusual about that. And, going through therapy, you come out the other side of it and you feel that such compassion for that younger part of you that felt that wounding. You think, oh, bless them.
The person who thinks having breast tenderness and chronic period pains and headaches every month is normal.
Mm.
That can be the same thing. You just
Yeah,
get used to it,
exactly.
or maybe it's been passed down, like this is just how it is. We're women. We go through the monthly curse and just take your painkillers and push through.
Yeah, we normalize it all, don't we?
So if there is anyone in a similar position to how you were 4-5 years ago, and they feel like they're doing good things and the symptoms aren't debilitating, they can still work and they can still function, and they're feeling this pull. I feel like people feel this pull and then the brain just gets in the way and they're like, oh no, I don't need that, like I'm not that bad, or it's too expensive, or this or that. What would you say to that person who's kind of on the fence of working with a practitioner, whether it's myself or someone else, just embarking on this next stage of their healing journey? What words of wisdom would you give to them?
If you think it's possible that you could feel better or your symptoms could be better, then the chances are they absolutely can. And you are so incredibly worth feeling better, because when you feel better, it has a butterfly effect on your whole life, the people around you. And, if there's resistance to the commitment, be it the time, be it the lifestyle changes, be it, the finances, it's interesting because I had all of that resistance as well. And yet it has all worked out. I've never struggled financially to pay for my supplements or pay for my sessions with Vivian. And actually, since working with her, I've gone freelance full time. My career is in the best place it's ever been, and I still put money into my health and time into my health. And I don't think that is not related. I think that is definitely connected in some way, because I gave that message to the universe and to myself to say, I am worth this work. And if I didn't feel the way I did now, the chances are I couldn't make my clients feel the way they feel now through the services that I bring to them.
Oh my God, yes. I love that so much. I find that to be so true in my world as well, because I feel like the more I created this like belief and mantra for myself, the more that I take care of myself, the more I can take care of others. Like the more I take care of myself, the more abundant I am, the more energy I have to give. It's like you can't pour from an empty cup. And even in another example, like when last year I moved into a house, so I became a homeowner for the first time. Prior to that, I was renting, and that was quite a steep like difference. It was like pretty much double my mortgage every month what my rent was previously, and I could obviously afford to do so, but it's just this feeling like, oh, will it all work out? What if my business like goes under as soon as I move in? It's just these catastrophizing thoughts. But now that extra money, that difference, I don't even think about it. It's just become normal. My business has become more successful because I trusted. I wasn't being stupid with my money. I knew that it was possible, and there was a bit of fear in that, but I pushed through. And you have to listen to those little nudges. Or it's like when I still worked part-time at Sainsbury's, and I was just I worked a few days a week, but I would be building my business like on the job. It wasn't really a good thing to do, but I was like going to the toilet and doing some emails or a little social media post on my lunch break, just try because that was my passion. I really wanted to do my nutrition work. And then I had this feeling, it's like, right, I wanna leave Sainsbury's after all these years. I think I've been there for like 7 years or so, but I'm really scared of going 100% into the nutrition world and working for myself and not having this sort of like £500-600 a month wage from them that I was guaranteed every month. But making that jump, I I didn't even like miss the money at all. It's just like my business just like exploded, and then it just got better and better and better every month. And I was like, why was I so afraid? And there's a quote, I think it's more in the religious space, but it was like, if you take the first step or take the first leap, and then God will like build the bridge. God will show you the rest of the path. But it's just like listening to these little nudges that we all have, and we all have different dreams and goals for different reasons. It's because we're all meant for different things. Some people dream of being a baker and open up a bakery. Some people want to live on a farm. Some people want to live in New York City and be a billionaire. Everyone has different desires because that's what we're all meant for. So if you listen to that and you just take the small steps, but sometimes the slightly bigger leaps, and you just trust the process, the universe will support you. I absolutely believe that. And it's always worked out for the greater good. And I'm so happy that you're feeling better on your health journey. And like we said at the start, it is an ongoing process. It's not a one and done thing. But I am so inspired by your journey, and I'm so grateful to have supported you. And I can't wait to see what's to come from the world of Jasmine. So please tell us what you're up to at the moment, what you're offering, and what's to come over the next few months.
Yeah, of course. Well, my work now, it's really evolved. It largely centers around the nervous system. And when we look at nervous system health, we're looking largely at being embodied. And if we look at those pillars of embodiment, it's movement, breath, and sound. So that's what I work with now. I encourage and facilitate somatic movement sessions. So it blends over into the yoga world, but it's mostly to do with honoring the different energetics within the body. And I talk about that in a spiritual sense, but I also talk about that within nervous system health as well, knowing what is a charge and knowing what is a softening or a release. And I teach classes throughout the week, so movement classes online and both in London as well. And I run events throughout the month. The events usually are around kind of breathwork exploration, which is all to do with your emotional health, emotional clearing, nervous system resilience work. And they can be quite spiritual journeys. People tend to go to complete alternate states of reality. And of course, the sound journeys as well, which bring in the softening and the soothing to the nervous system.
And I can't let you go without telling us the power of the breath.
Oh, the breath. Yeah. It's changed.
It needs its little moment on its own, the power of the breath.
The breath, yeah, it really does, because we hold so much in to our system, and when we hold an emotion in, the chances are we hold our breath. So we kind of stop breathing, or we might breathe shallowly, or you might notice, we call it email apnea, but it's where you're typing away and you realize, oh, I've not taken a breath, and you go, oh, and you kind of reset, right? And when we feel emotion, the breath changes in relation to the emotion. And often the first time we feel an emotion, specifically tears, what's the first thing we say?
Don't cry.
Yeah, don't cry, or if we're the one crying, we say sorry.
Oh yeah, true.
And if we're angry, it's like, don't get mad, don't get angry. Well, actually, for a long time I was the person that said, I don't get angry. I'm just not an angry person. Turns out we are just excellent at hiding it.
It's manifested in other ways.
Absolutely, and it can manifest physically. You know, there's a whole belief system around how it can manifest through illness, and there is something so freeing about giving yourself permission to experience the full spectrum of emotion. And I hold a weekly breathwork circles for that exploration specifically. So allowing time and space to bring to the surface what it is you need to bring. We hold circles, breathwork circles for grief to allow time and space for the grieving process. And it's during these settings that people often say to me, you know, that they have the talk therapy for years, you know, that they're working through it. And then it's almost like the body has time to catch up. The body has time to get on board and say, okay, that's the releasing piece, or that's the integration piece that then makes sense with all of the other cognitive based therapies that we do.
Yeah, that's so
So
powerful.
yeah, I'm a huge fan of the breath, and it all really links back to the nervous system, and that's really the kind of center of it all.
And I was like doing my breathing as you were saying that, just checking in, because probably the rest of the podcast episode, I was committing the crime of not breathing deeply.
Yeah, we all do it. We all do it.
The posture, sitting back, shoulders back, and deep
Yeah.
body breaths.
Yeah. And it's just having those moments of awareness where we check in and we say, for you, it might be a pattern of breath. You might say, oh, I notice I hold my breath. Something I'm navigating at the moment is I'm sending a lot of tension to my jaw.
Mm.
And actually that TRE session was really helpful for that, to help with that release. But it might be patterns of tension we hold in our breath. It might be patterns of tension that we hold in our system, in our fascia. And within our fascia lives our nervous system. So it's all about becoming curious of where we are storing that tension, that resistance, and where can we give ourselves the time and the space to help it release and to help it process.
And your Instagram is really like helpful with these videos that you share. So I would recommend everyone check you out. What's your Instagram handle again?
I'm finding balance with Jasmine on everything.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll link you in the show notes. And I just want to say thank you so much. Like I said, so excited to see what's going on in the future. And something that we are collaborating on is that you're going to be at my Manchester event. I've not really spoken about this too much. I feel like what's going on? When's this happening? Basically in Manchester on the 5th of October, I'm going to be doing a workshop. It's my first ever, like, just mine, because I've done people for other, I've done things for other people before. And I've not announced tickets or anything just yet, but Jasmine is going to come and do, we'll just see how we're going on in the day, but some sort of somatic, like we've been talking about today, somatic practice, because I'm having someone do Pilates in the morning. I didn't want another like vinyasa flow or anything like that, because we just want a bit of chill. People need to wind down. It's going to be on the weekend. So yeah, we'll have a lovely breath, body-based session with Jasmine. So if you want to come and hang with us in person, we're going to be meeting for the first time in real life, which I am excited about. That will be in October. So you're traveling up from London, and we'll have a lovely old time. I'll be doing some talks on probably mindset, hormone health, gut health, and yeah, Pilates session, delicious food. I might bring Norman as well. I've had a few people like, please bring Norman.
Oh,
So we'll do a meet and greet with Norman as well. That's my
that'd
joke,
be
by the
so
way, if anyone's like, who's Norman?
He's so cute. Yeah, I can't wait to meet you in person actually, because we've had all these sessions online, but it's always different when you get to connect in person. So I'm very excited to come up. Yeah, up, not across, up.
Yeah,
And
my
I might stay.
psychology
I'm
skills were
planning to
tested for a
stay for
moment.
the weekend, so like make a whole weekend
Oh,
out of it.
amazing.
And yeah.
I can't wait. Well, I will speak to you very soon. Have a lovely summer that will pass before we know it. And then we will see each other in person in October. But thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing your story and just being open and vulnerable. We were speaking off air before we got started on how just sharing, like me sharing lab test results or this recent trend that's going on social media. These social media is fake. Here are some things that I'm struggling with. I posted that yesterday. That's had like really good feedback. Just we think that we're the only person in the world going through something, or like no one's ever struggled with this before, but then everyone's like, oh my God, me too, I feel exactly the same. And it just like really brings out the humanness in us all. So yeah, thanks for sharing your story and your experience of working with me. And we'll tag you in the show notes. And if people want to come and say hi and follow you and work with you privately or come to the workshop, they can do so over there. So thanks, Jasmine.
Thank you so much for having me, Vivian.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, I would love for you to leave me a rating and review on your podcast app, as this helps to support the show and it allows it to reach more people with this valuable information. Come and say hi over on Instagram. I'm at Viva Natural Health. And if you haven't already, check out my website, vivanaturalhealth.co.uk, for tons more free resources and to discover how I could support you further. I currently offer one-on-one consultation packages if you want my top level support, then more affordable group programs and self-paced online courses. So there really is something for everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you back here next week for another episode.